Okay, good morning. If we can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilman Miller, can you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, I know. The first item on the agenda would be Executive Director's contract, which would be executive session number 1. Do we want to go into executive session, or we want to?
Yes.
I think we should.
Yes.
We should? Okay. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go into executive session.
Chairman, would the board mind, because everybody in this room is going to have to leave, could we do all the other items and then do it at the end?
I don't have a problem with it, but we had it on the first of the thing, but we can do it at the end. That's fine. That'd probably be better. I agree with
Because
you.
most of the people will just leave after the other action items. I mean, that's up to the board.
No, that's fine. We're okay with that. Someone, well, who had the second?
I had this.
Will you pull your second away?
Okay,
Well,
yes,
just
I-
FYI, I do have to leave, so I may not get to evaluate these.
Well, before you have to leave, let us know. We can break then, because
Okay.
we want you to be here. And we'll move fast, because I don't want you to leave anyway.
Okay. Oh, thanks, Mayor.
It's not even
I don't
February.
usually hear that.
All right, so she deleted she removed her second, so we don't have a second. All right, Executive Director's report.
Mayor, did you want to take public comment?
Well, you guys didn't put it on here, but it's not in version
It's
first.
on there.
It's before the executive session. It's a very top item. Open comment.
Yes, Mr. Rooney. I'm sorry, Mr. Rooney.
Oh, nothing today.
And I knew that. And I knew that, so. All right, Mike, go.
Good morning, board members. Mike Mealy with the El Paso EPMPO. So over the last several months, the EPMPO has communicated at least twice to the policy board that there is a need to potentially do an MTP update. Along with the update, we are also required to maintain and develop a new tip. And so I think some of the communication has gone out as late as Tuesday to identify the strategy of progressing with the update along with the tip development. And so for everybody's information is that with the development of this update along with the new tip, there is a conformity determination that is required with these two planning activities. So this is a very simplistic diagram that we have. And so essentially is that we're going to look at our planning documents and the projects that are in there. And we need to make sure that those capacity changes are affordable. And then we'll be able to go into the regional modeling efforts along with the emissions estimates. And then we'll come back to ensure that we have fiscal constraint. And then we come back to the policy board after we do everything that's required under our public participation program for approval. And so part of the letter that Mayor Leeser sent out as chair is to identify the strategy to ensure that we are successful in developing the update along with the new tip. And so we're going to come with a tiered system. So very simplistically is that the idea is to look at the projects that are in the tip along with fiscal year 19 and 20 to see if we can accelerate. Then we'll fall into a tier 2 process where we identify roadway projects that they haven't received full funding. So ideally is that once we identify those gaps in funding, we progress with those roadway projects. In the event that we still have roadway projects that affect our conformity determination, we start looking at projects that do not affect our conformity determination. So essentially is that we need to potentially reprogram projects that are in our current tip along with fiscal years 19 and 20 to ensure that we meet conformity. After all that is done, if there is still money available, we will have a call for projects. And so ideally is that those projects that will potentially be reprogrammed will become priority and then from there, it'll be an open call. Along with that is that we also have, on the Texas side, the Transportation Alternative Program. And so that'll be a joint call, but it has its own requirements. If anybody has any questions or comments about this.
Jay?
Yeah. Mike, what happens when you have a TIP project, let's say it's the third, we approve a TIP, and the third or fourth year out, we have a project that we realize we don't need anymore, but because of other circumstances that have evolved within the community in the last year, the year or two before then a new project needs to really fit in there. But it would still be a high priority thing. Because let's just say TxDOT's doing their the Go project, and that we want to put more service or our new road or something in that area that developed from something that we couldn't foresee a couple years before. How do we make that a priority to change a TIP item that's in the back end of the TIP approved now, but with the adding years we're doing, how do we change something in the third year of a TIP that was already approved?
So if you have a project that is in the current TIP, let's say in fiscal year 17 or 18, and
Yes.
if I understand it correctly, it's no longer a priority?
It's not a priority because something else has really come in.
Okay.
Because of developing circumstances that needs to go in there.
So we would need to understand exactly how much the project has progressed. So do you have a, agreement, things of that nature? But let's just say that it has not been obligated to a certain degree. And so we can look at why the priority has changed and then come back and assess the new project and understand what the need and purpose is.
And where does that fit, though, with your call for projects?
It'll come in with the tier 1, tier 2 process. So
But you're gonna you're doing a call for projects for 18 and 19, right? To approve. a new-
essentially, what we're looking at is accelerating projects within the TIP, and then also in fiscal year 19 and 20. So the new years is 19 and 20. So that's what we're looking for in terms of new projects.
I know, but how do I put in a new project in the TIP for 17?
So all you would have to do is send us a project request form and saying that the need and purpose has changed from the previous priority, and this is the higher priority now.
Okay, and that could be any time?
Well, certainly, we would want to limit it to the quarterly revisions that we have. And so understand that the TIP is a dynamic, a document, and we could also change it any time that the board feels the need.
Okay.
Ms. Acosta?
Ms. Molina, we're still gonna have the scoring system? You're still gonna be scoring the
Yes, ma'am.
projects that are coming in?
Yes, ma'am. So
And you're
I
using the same selection criteria, or are you changing the selection criteria?
no, so in reference to the policy, the MPO is enabled to make recommendations to TPAC and also the policy board. So we're going to come back with recommendations to fund roadway projects, for example, Wynn Road. So we'll present an alternative. And then, so if we have the open call per se, where there's new projects being introduced, that's when we execute the project selection process.
Okay.
Because remember, if there's projects that are in the TIP or in the last, 2 fiscal years, those are already priorities that the board has set forward.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anything else?
And so ideally is that, once we have reconciliation confirmed, we will activate the call for projects. And so we wanted to ensure that everybody understood what the instructions were for the call for projects. So ideally, if everything goes well, we will have approval by the federal and state partners by the beginning of the new fiscal year, next year. So if there's any questions or comments about that. And please remember is that once you submit your project request forms to the MPO, we will be meeting with those agencies as well.
Any other questions, comments? All right.
Item number 2 is discussion and action to approve the minutes for the October 23rd, 2015 Transportation Policy Board meeting.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you.
Item number 3 is discussion and action to approve the recommendation from the Executive Committee to adopt the Parliamentary Rules of Procedure for all meetings to begin 10-day public comment period starting November 20th, 2015 to November 30th, 2015 to amend the Transportation Policy Board bylaws to incorporate the Parliamentary Rules of Procedure.
Executive Chair.
Okay.
That's
The
that's you today.
The Executive Committee discussed the parliamentary procedures and came out with different recommendations. Would you like to read them, or do I read them?
I can.
Oh, Mr. Miranda? Mr. Miranda?
Right, before you are the proposed recommended parliamentary rules that the executive committee considered. And they are basically an attempt to smooth out the process and to address issues as they may arise during a meeting. There's nothing magical about them. I mean, I think they're commonsensical. And so they were all proposed for consideration by the TPB. It's a dynamic document. It can be changed at any time. Nothing is set in stone. So as we proceed and we find reasons to modify them, obviously you have that prerogative in the future.
Ms. Costa?
Thank you, Mayor. As part of the executive committee, there was a lot of discussion. We went on over the discussion over an hour. But I think you've been provided with a document, a red line document, so you can see the changes that have been incorporated into the document. And I think one of the important factors is that if we don't have an item that coincides with the rules of order that are being presented to you, then Robert's Rules of Order will prevail. Am I correct? So I think that's probably the most important element.
We're not adopting Robert's Rules of Order.
No. But if there's a conflict, what we discussed was if it's not addressed in the rules of order that we are establishing, then Robert's Rules of Order prevail.
Yeah, that's there, yeah. Any comments?
Let me make a clarification on that point.
Okay.
If you look at Section A of the proposed rules, it clearly states that if there's a conflict between these rules that are before you and Robert's Rules of Order, then these rules govern.
Correct. Sorry.
If there is an issue that's not addressed, then Robert Rules of Order control, okay?
Yes.
That's the clarification on it.
Any other discussion before we move forward? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
Item number 4 is discussion action to approve recommendation from the Transportation Project Advisory Committee on the Proposition 1 candidate projects for fiscal years 2016 and 2017 to be included in the Horizon 2040 Metropolitan Transportation Plan and the Horizon 2015-18 Transportation Improvement Program to be A, I-10 widening project, upgrade to 8 lanes from FM 659, which is Zaragoza Road, to East Lake Boulevard using Prop 1 funding in the amount of $15.69 million in fiscal years 2016. This project is currently in the Horizon 2040 Metropolitan Transportation Plan in fiscal year 2019. And then item B is Mesa Park Interchange and Frontage Roads Project to construct a frontage road facility from Mesa Park Interchange to Executive Center Interchange and overpass at Mesa Park using Prop 1 funding in fiscal years 2017. The total project cost is $23 million. This project is contingent upon the development of an updated Horizon 2040 Metropolitan Transportation Plan.
Good morning, Chairman. Greg McNichol, Chairman of the TPAC Committee, here this morning to recommend to this committee the approval of this item. I do know that TxDOT has additional information on this item, and I'm going to turn the floor over to Bob to present that additional information and some funding changes.
Good morning.
Thank you, Greg. We can get that up. You have before you a printout of what's going to show up here on the screen in a second. This is Proposition 1 funding. Move to the next slide. Go ahead. Go one more. Essentially, this is Proposition 1 made available to each MPO. And you can see the percentages there, 45% for mobility, 25% for projects that improve connectivity, 20% for statewide maintenance and preservation, 10% for roadway safety. Go ahead. Prop 1 allocations that we have, $15.694 million for fiscal year 16. In fiscal year 17, because of the reduced amount of severance tax, it looks as if we're going to have about $8.21 million available. Go ahead. Now, to be funded under Prop 1, a project must be on system. It can't be a toll facility. It can be used for total project cost. And it has to be let by August within the state, with respective state fiscal year. Okay, for 2016, what we're recommending is the final project for the Americas Interchange. And essentially, this is just adding an additional lane from Zaragoza to East Lake. It is, the schematics are at 100%, environmental's 100%. We have complete approval. There's no right-of-way required. It's at 100%. Final design today is right at 95%. So it's in very good shape to let in fiscal year 16. And there's this shows you where that project is. It's right through the Americas Interchange from Zaragoza to East Lake. Go ahead. The fiscal year 17 Prop 1 recommendation. Now, this project was originally part of the Collector Distributor Road project, what we call the Go 10 project today. What happened was, during development of the project, there is a development proposed, Aldea development, east of I-10 and north of Executive Center. The developer came to us and said, well, right today, you're going to build the frontage roads on structure on both sides of I-10. And we were doing that to try to stay out of the flow paths so that we didn't require a Section 404 permit. Developer said that, well, we're going to have to get a 404 permit for our development anyway. And it would be a lot easier to connect to a frontage road if it was on grade. And we have a great deal of additional embankment when we grade our site. So could we come onto your property, onto your right-of-way, place the embankment according to your standards, build the drainage underneath it, build the abutment for the east side of the bridge and the walls protecting the embankment, and then you come back and just go ahead and build the road at grade. Well, it saves the state and us about $5 million to do that. And essentially, the developer is donating that work to us. Now, why do we want it in 2017? Right now, as you know, we've got a concrete barricade along the side of I-10. I hear about it probably every day. And today it's providing access primarily for the Go 10 project to go down and do the drill shafts for the future expansions of the bridges. If this goes through, the developer will be placing fill behind those barricades during the spring, or late winter, early spring of next year, and building that embankment, building the abutment, and building the walls. We would intend then in October of next year, which is actually fiscal year 17, to let this project so that we can build the frontage road, particularly on the east side, and add the new ramp. Everybody is concerned about the ramp from Executive Center to westbound I-10. If we do this right, that ramp will never, ever be replaced. Essentially, this frontage road to the new interchange will move the ramp to the top of the hill instead of right at Executive Center. Be the same movement, it's just in a different location. And if we let it in October, we can coordinate it with everything else in the GO-10 project, with the Aldea development, and with the Border West Expressway. So that's why we're proposing this project. Now, unfortunately, it's more expensive than the $8.21 million. So it is a cocktail of funding that was taken to the to TPAC, and you can see it up there. It's the 8.21 is Cat 2 Prop 1. 3.82 is Cat 4 Prop 1. The Cat 12, 3.89 million. Cat 2, 4.08 million, and Cat 7 STP, 3 million, for a total funding of about $23 million for the project. So that's our proposal for 2017. It's really important to us to be able to coordinate this with both the Border West Expressway and the GO-10 project so that we can at least minimize the pain to people traveling from the east side to the west side and all of the effects that occur as a result of those two projects. So that's it. Oh, go ahead and put the map up. Yeah, that'll just give you an idea of what the project is. And again, the way we intend to phase this is to build the east side first on the embankment, which is there, then complete the new bridge for the new interchange at Mesa Park, and build the structures on the west side of I-10, connecting back into Executive Center.
Bob, just what's the expected construction time once you get started?
Construction time's probably about 18 months, maybe 20 months. We should be able to get the east side done a lot faster than that.
And would you explain the 404?
Okay, I'm sorry. Section 404 permit refers to an old act, but it is a permit that is issued by the Corps of Engineers when you affect the navigable waters of the U.S. And believe it or not, a lot of our arroyos are classified as navigable waters of the U.S. So what that means is that the developer has to develop a retention facility, a permanent water facility on the north side. You control the flows that go into the drainage system, and that has to match the current capacity of the system underneath I-10. And the developer has to build all of that. And there's been an agreement reached with El Paso Water to maintain that facility once it is in place. So that goes through a federal process where basically all of the federal agencies commit to, get to comment on it and suggest things that they want to have done. And that was all completed and approved in November of this year.
Any questions for TxDOT? Okay.
I would just remind the board, if I may, that item B does need to revise the funding to what Bob indicated it to be, because the funding did shift from the November 4th meeting to today's presentation to y'all, so that would need to be a part of your action if you're going to approve it. Does that make sense?
Do you require two motions?
No.
Maybe just the approval and then the amended funding sources.
Was present.
Okay, so we have a motion.
Move to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 5 is discussion and action to approve the proposed 2016 Transportation Policy Board meeting schedule.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Thank you. Next.
Item number 6 is discussion and action to approve to request absent Transportation Policy Board members.
Would it be
And-
easier to just read the ones that are here?
We have Mayor Castañeda, Representative Gomez, Mayor Charles Gonzalez, who's the new mayor of Clint, City Manager Tommy Gonzalez, Mayor Martin Lerma, Representative Marisa Marquez, Representative Joe Moody, Representative Courtney Nyland, Senator Jose Rodriguez, Representative No, and Commissioner Perez.
You have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion in 2 seconds. All in favor?
Right.
All opposed? Thank you. Next item is,
Next item is report, item number 7, report on
yeah,
the
we're gonna
Secure
do that.
Border Trade
What
Demonstration.
I'm gonna, now that we've got to this point, just because the judge does have to leave, I'd entertain a motion to go to executive session.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to go to executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Let's go, we're now in executive session. We gotta go. ¿no?
Yes.
Voy a quedar en este lado.
I like you. I still like you. Gee.
Oh, okay. But it was, well, I
You
work
ready?
downtown too, so it makes it easy.
Okay, we are now out of executive session. We're on item executive session 1.
Okay, Mayela with me.
Ayla?
Agenda item executive session 1 is the discussion and action of the executive director's contract under the Transportation Policy Board. Did retire into executive session pursuant to the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Subchapter D. And it was to discuss Section 551.074 personnel matters on the executive director. Consensus was discussed during executive session. We have come out of executive session, and the recommended motion is,
Well, we've not made a motion yet. There's,
Recommended.
yeah, right.
Is there
Just make sure.
Is it on?
Go ahead.
it is, the motion was to recommend the executive directors. Okay.
Motion is,
So we need to have a motion made on that issue.
can we get, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Mayor Payne.
All right.
For clarification purposes, the motion is to approve and accept the recommendations of the executive committee regarding the executive director's contract with the following changes. That the base salary of the executive director be $146,000 a year. That if there is a termination for cause, that the executive director shall not be eligible for any severance pay, and that there will be an annual evaluation of the executive director's performance required on his anniversary date on an annual basis.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
And if terminated for convenience, there's a difference there. Nothing if terminated for cause. If terminated for convenience, it's a 3-month severance.
First year.
Less the first year.
Right, and 6 months after that.
After the first year.
Right.
Correct. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Mayor, can I say something just real quick? I
Go
want to
ahead.
thank the executive committee, the members of the executive committee who worked on this. You made it very easy for the board. You did your research and helped come up with a structure. And so we thank you for the work that you did on it. And Mike, we really appreciate your leadership, and we're looking forward to some continued great work in the future.
Thank you. Congratulations, Mike. And the executive committee, who's on the executive committee? All of you. Thank you very much. I ditto what the judge just said. Thank you. And with that, we go to the next item.
Item number 7, which is report on the Secure Border Trade Demonstration Project update.
It is a biggie.
Is someone here to do the presentation?
Yes, he's coming up, sir.
Oh, okay. There happens to be a pole right here.
I thought it was a good opportunity to have a show and tell day for you guys.
Yeah.
We'll keep it short. But, these are some of the items that were used in the Secure Border Trade Project, so I think it gives you a little bit of a sense for maybe the magnitude or the significance of the kinds of solution that we put in place. The R2D2 version here actually sat inside the cab with the driver, and it was.
Can you do me a favor for the record? Introduce yourself, please, sir.
Sorry, certainly. My name is Bob Gray. I'm with Secure Origins
Thank you.
here in El
Good morning.
Paso. Thank you very much. Today, I want to thank you for the opportunity to give you the basically update, final report on the Secure Border Trade Project. The Secure Border Trade Project was initiated by the County of El Paso, and it was funded through the Coordinated Border Infrastructure Funds that were provided by the Federal Highway Administration. And those funds are specifically designated to improve crossing times for vehicles as well as commercial shipments passing through the ports. Let's see here. I already went to a couple of slides. How do I get this thing back? Is that back? There we go. The first slide that you see here is essentially the result or the product of the Secure Border Trade Demonstration Project. The focus here is specifically to ensure the integrity of cross-border shipments, basically to put in place an unprecedented, secure, and verifiable security for shipments from the origin or plant to the port and to the final destination. And of course, we repeated the same process for southbound shipments as well. This particular project was initiated with the understanding that in order for us to improve crossing times at the commercial ports of entry, we have to be able to ensure and verify the integrity and the security of those shipments to Customs and Border Protection. Customs and Border Protection is able to provide reduced inspection times. They can provide benefits, if you will. But in order for those benefits to be maximized, we have to be able to verify to CBP the integrity of those shipments. In addition to that, CBP then responds by providing additional benefits. And as a result of those additional benefits, the third portion of this project was to look at how we take those benefits and we can translate those back into a formal return on investment for industry. So, for example, industry can implement these procedures, but for them to do that, there has to be a critical return on investment. This particular project allowed us to build a very solid foundation for security and information going directly to CBP that allowed them to, in essence, focus their limited resources on the higher risk shipments and allow the shipments to be able to move through the ports much more efficiently than before. And again, another major portion of the project was the development of an actual business model that could be used to facilitate ongoing investments to security as well as ongoing improvements to the crossing times at the ports. Secure Border Trade Demonstration Project, like I mentioned, was initiated by the County of El Paso. This was a major project. It was a major effort on their part to get the funding set aside. The $2.9 million came from the CBI funds. There was a local requirement of 20%, and that was very readily provided by private sector. In essence, the project not only demonstrated the capabilities of securing shipments, but the fundamental requirement for that project was to build a system that could expand border-wide, not just to serve the El Paso area, but to be able to move border-wide and provide this solution throughout the U.S.-Mexico border. A key participant in the project was the Texas Transportation Institute. The local office here in El Paso participated very, very closely in the project. They worked closely with the County of El Paso to define the formal specifications, requirements for the project. Another unique aspect of this was the Technical Monitoring Committee. They created a specific committee to oversee the project, answer questions, provide recommendations, and so forth. The lead on the project was a company called TransCore. If you're familiar with TransCore, they provide RFID solutions that are used for tolling, but they also provide the RFID tags that go on the trucks throughout U.S., Mexico, and Canadian borders that are then read by the sensors that CBP uses to identify that truck and that in particular shipment. We also had participants from CELC. Basically, it's a company in Juarez that provides custom training for the development of trusted trade programs for both Mexico and the U.S. Secure Origins, we provided the software development. We had also participation from TransTelco. TransTelco has a fixed fiber network that extends from Houston all the way to San Diego, and also from El Paso as far south as Mexico City and Puebla. So we were able to use that dedicated fiber communication infrastructure to ensure that we had secure communications, high volume access to video and so forth. Of course, the devices were provided by a company called On Asset out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The demonstration project ultimately included over 25,000 shipments. The requirement was to actually have 18 full months of monitoring for 60 shipments per day. The first 6 months of the project was really spent going through the design process, working with industry, manufacturers, and carriers to define what the requirements were. We went through a small pilot project, and then the final 18 months then went through to formally test the equipment, test the processes, and so forth. We had some very significant improvements for the participants in the project. We saw very significant reductions in the actual inspection times for those companies. We also had to address issues of needing to segment trusted trade because they were not being able to get to the ports. So the additional wait times were taking away from the value of the trusted trade participation. One of the major benefits was the ability to reduce the number of hours that the Mexican drivers are having to put on the road. Typically, they need to put in as many as 18 hours a day in order to make enough round trips to be able to make a living or to make a profit from those companies. And of course, drivers themselves become a very high-risk element with respect to the cross-border shipments. In this particular project, we had a major benefit for the drivers as well. One other very significant piece is that as we look at various holidays or events where there are reduced hours of operation by inspectors, there becomes a congestion, if you will, at the ports. The companies that participated in the Project 21 and the Secure Border Trade Project were able to circumvent those very long wait lines and events to be able to get through the ports quickly. And of course, there was an unprecedented increase in the security of those shipments, obviously provided for tremendous efficiency and improvement for crossing those shipments. And of course, in the end, there was a very significant increase in profitability for those companies as well. This is just a timeline that shows you, in essence, the last several months of the Secure Border Demonstration Project and crossing times. You probably can't see it very well, but there's some little blue dots on there that you can see where it says Project 21, shipments begin. What we ended up doing is the Secure Border Trade Project provided the opportunity to develop a very concrete system for securing shipments and providing information to CBP. What it did not provide for was a mechanism for CBP to validate and actually improve crossing times. In other words, CBP's role in this particular project was not to assist and to help us to improve crossing times. Their role was specifically from the onset to observe. The Project 21 initiative was created, in essence, through the city and through the cooperative relationship between the City of El Paso and CBP with a specific focus of improving crossing times and improving the economic viability for those shipments. And so the Project 21 shipment became a variation on the theme. So shipments that were using the Secure Border Trade Project technology to verify the integrity of the shipments were recognized by CBP through Project 21 as trusted, validated shipments. As a result of that, those shipments were able to see the improved crossing times, if you will. You will see that there is a drop in the actual crossing time. I think it goes from 43 down to something like 25 minutes. That's a very significant reduction, if you will, in the course of about 6 months. And what happened during that months was two things. Mostly there was a growing relationship between the City of El Paso and Customs and Border Protection with a focus on improving, if you will, the return on investment and ensuring that there is, in essence, profitability. The other aspect of it is the Self company that I mentioned before started to see as much as 25 additional companies signing up every month because they now could see that there was, in fact, a tangible return on investment for those efforts, if you will, or those technologies to improve and ensure the security of shipments, if you will. So again, the project had some very significant, shall we say, successes, if you will, and they were very demonstratable as well. This particular slide shows September 16th on 2013. Just as a quick background, September 16th is the Mexican holiday, so the port at the Bridge of the Americas was shut down. All of the shipments were then forced to go through the Zaragoza port of entry. I know you can't really see those numbers, but on the left-hand side, it's the number of minutes. Each one of those bars represents how long it took a company to get from their plant to their destination on the U.S. side. We had shipments that took as long as 7 hours to get through the ports. But the Project 21 and Secure Border Trade projects, those shipments made it through the port in typically 30 minutes to an hour, and in some cases an hour and a half, from point of origin all the way through the port and to the destination. This becomes real important for a couple of reasons. One of the participants in this project provides specific replacement equipment for major utilities on the East Coast and throughout the country. Following the Hurricane Sandy event, that particular company was pressured to be able to get those replacement equipment, the replacement utility supplies and stuff out of Juarez through the ports and to the East Coast as soon as possible. And their participation in this project allowed them to be able to facilitate, in essence, a rapid passage through the port, if you will. So when you start to look at essential trade, the Secure Border Trade Project provides a path, if you will, for essential trade to be able to move through the ports quickly, even under limited circumstances. The last point that I'll make here is one major aspect of the project was to look at a return on investment. When you look at adding additional costs for inspections, tracking the shipments, the additional cost that's necessary to ensure and provide that integrity has to be recovered somehow. And so through the course of this project, we were able to develop a formal business model that allows and supports companies to be able to make this high-level investment and to fully secure those shipments, if you will. I'll just talk quickly about this. The middle column that you see there shows a 1.75. The average number of round trips that carriers make going through the port right now is 1.75 round trips. They need to typically make 2 full round trips every day in order for them to break even or make money. Down at the bottom of that, you'll see the $14.75 or 79 cents. What you're seeing is that they're spending $285 for the truck, the driver, the gas, and all that other, shall we say, costs, fees, and so forth, and they're only making about $15 per truck per day, okay? If they can get to 2 round trips per day, that goes from $15 to about $40 a day. We were able to bring these companies up to 3 round trips a day. And if you'll notice on that one line, they went from making $15 a day per truck up to as much as $140 a day. That's a 10 times increase in profitability for these companies just by being able to increase the number of round trips a day that they're able to make as a result of this project, okay? All right. The background of the project, I think most of you are aware of the trade volume that goes between the United States and Mexico. We have over $500 billion of trade between U.S. and Mexico at this point. In fact, I think the recent numbers are $534 or $35 billion. You'll notice that $200 billion goes through the state of Texas, about $60 billion is going through California. El Paso alone does over $90 billion. So we are about 1/5 of the total trade between U.S. and Mexico. So our ports of entry are vital. They're vital to the competitiveness of the United States and Mexico, if you will. What we also know, this was a study that was done by the U.S. Department of Commerce, and I think most of you are aware of these what we would call rather startling numbers. There's $116 million per minute that are lost as a result of the delays going through the port. I'm not too sure what that means or how you get to it. Actually, I do know how to get to it. But some of the other numbers here show that in that same report, they're estimating that by the year 2017, that the cost of delays at the ports will be in the neighborhood of $12 to $13 billion to the United States coming out of that trade. Now, this provides a little more information. San Diego did a special study for their port. The Otay Mesa Port of Entry handles about 3,000 shipments, which is very consistent with the volume that we handle. Their 2007 report showed that 40-minute delays is resulting in a $700 million impact to San Diego alone, okay? And of course, the impact to Tijuana and the Mexican side is about 1.5 times that. So we're talking about that 40-minute delay having close to a $2 billion impact to the San Diego-Tijuana region. And then you also see that that extrapolates to $1.5 to $2.5 billion impact to the United States and Mexico, for a total impact of close to $4 billion. El Paso right now is seeing 70-minute wait times, 70 to 90-minute average wait times getting through the ports. So the economic impact of what's happening right now within El Paso is unmeasured, but I think this starts to give you a sense of how significant those delays in fact are, okay? This is a special study that was done by the Wilson Center out of Washington, D.C. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. It was completed last year. It's a State of Border report. This particular project or this particular study focuses, or their primary response or primary conclusion was that the competitiveness of...
We've lost a quorum. If you leave the room, we'll lose a quorum. Okay, it's only for presentation, so we're okay. Okay, but we do no longer have a quorum.
You can continue to hear the presentation.
But we cannot take action on anything, any other item going forward.
Dialogue with the presenter.
Correct, no dialogue either. No. Thank you. And we can't adjourn because we can't take action, so we'll have to stay here. Please, well, no, we'll be here next Friday when you come back.
Well, I'll try to move along a little bit faster on this project anyway. Basically, that particular point points out that the competitiveness of North America literally is tied to our ability to improve the efficiency of getting through the ports of entry. And they also point out that the most cost-effective way for us to improve that is to be able to increase participation in the Trusted Trade Program. Now, if I can give you a quick number here. A standard inspection lane going through the El Paso Port of Entry, a standard lane for Customs and Border Protection, handles about 20 trucks per hour. A fast lane or a fast booth can handle 3 times that volume. So as we start to increase the participation in the Trusted Trade Program, we literally can double and triple the capacity of our port, okay? And so that becomes a very tangible number. The other aspect here, too, is that CBP now has an approved program for pre-inspection. And so with pre-inspection, we can then set up lanes, and those lanes potentially could handle 6 times the volume of a standard lane. So this concept of improving participation in trusted trade, improving the security of those shipments, but more important, working with CBP to ensure that there's cost-effective, if you will, and a return on investment, immediately starts to build additional capacity to the ports of entry and obviously has a tremendous impact locally. More important, it provides a solution to a U.S.-Mexico national problem that we're facing. Okay. This is the CTPAT trends. CTPAT is the customs program called Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism. It's a volunteer program that was initiated literally the month after 9/11. And it started with 7 companies, and the growth of the membership of CTPAT has continued, but you can see at this point that it's leveled off. It is about 11,000 companies now. to give you a sense for what the potential of that that program is, Commissioner Alan Burson in 2009 stated that the number of members, instead of being 11,000, it would be 40,000 members by the year 2016. And so what that tells you is that the CTPAT program has struggled, okay? It's a voluntary program, but the only way people are going to sign up for CTPAT is if we can prove that it's cost effective. Industry can't donate improvements. They can't donate security. They have to be able to see that return on investment. That's what this project was all about, was to ensure the integrity of the shipments and exchange for that return on investment that companies need to have. There's some other tables in there or numbers. I think what you'll see is that only 25% of the overall number of shipments going through the board or through the ports are CTPAT and trusted trade. So we have a tremendous opportunity, if you will, to increase the participation in trusted trade programs. The project, we collected extensive data on the wait times. This is a view of the Zaragoza port of entry. Down the middle of that is the Rio Grande. On the right-hand side is the U.S. port of entry. On the left-hand side are the wait lines getting into aduana and passing through aduana. This starts to point out the fact that just improving the fast lane and improving the time getting through CBP is only a small portion of the overall issue that we have to address. And this particular project gave us the opportunity to collect the level of data that's necessary to fully understand those ports and to find other alternatives to be able to improve the crossings. The project does follow the Federal Highway Work Administration's, they call it systems engineering, so there was a formal technical process that we had to go through. And of course, you saw this slide originally. This slide actually identifies almost 50 steps that we monitor for a shipment from the time it leaves the plant till it reaches the destination on the U.S. side and then returns and goes back to the other side. Again, it's a very extensive process, and as a result of that, the shipments are in essence impenetrable, if you will. We have yet to have had a shipment that has been contaminated that we did not detect, if you will. And in fact, the companies, as they begin to participate in this, their shipments become real boring because they just go from the plant. The drivers don't stop for food or to visit their girlfriends or even exit the route. They will very much adhere that route to be sure that they get through the port very quickly, if you will. When Alan Burson was here, he recognized the value of this, and he called this specifically the first A to Z solution that provides security of cross-border shipments. Okay? And Alan Burson was the commissioner at the time. This is just an architecture of the software, Secure Origins. We developed that software with a $2 million grant that we got from the state of Texas, from the Emerging Technology Fund. To develop this, we worked with Cal Poly University. It's based on an artificial intelligence solution, and that particular framework was used to ensure the supplies to the Iraq War for all of the supplies that were being shipped to the military. The same software is applied now to the security, monitoring the shipments and ensuring the integrity of each shipment, if you will. This is an example of what we call the Common Operating Picture. This was provided directly available to CBP, so they have complete line of sight and visibility to every shipment. Whenever there is a specific alert that is raised, in this particular case, we had a shipment that went off route. As soon as he went off route, the system detects it and raises a, shall we say, a level yellow alert saying that you need to keep an eye on this. The truck continued on until it stopped. At the point that it stopped and it was off route, the level of that alert goes up to an orange level saying there's really something not going on here. And in this particular case, that truck actually opened up, and at that point it was a red alert. So that information was pushed directly to CBP. When the truck arrives at CBP, the information is there as part of their ACE system. They, regardless of what port it goes through, they're able to catch that truck and pull it aside and do an inspection on it. All right. One thing we had to do, as we mentioned before, you saw on that one slide, the really long line of trucks waiting on the Mexican side. What we ended up doing is working with Promofront, which in essence works with Aduana on the Mexican side, and we created special lanes that allow the trusted trade to be able to get through the port. The view that you see on the left was before we put those lanes in. On the left, you see basically all of the trucks, whether they're part of CTPAT, whether they're part of the Mexican NEEC program, regardless, they were all jumbled together into lanes trying to get through the port. When we put in the Frontera 21 lanes, we set 2 lanes on the right-hand side to specifically support trusted trade. And what you see immediately is your trusted trade shipments now get to the port in 2 or 3 minutes. And then on the left side, even the standard shipments benefit because now you have a very organized flow getting through the ports. Okay. The trusted trade projects from Project 21 and from the Secure Border Trade Project were averaging about 25 minutes to get through the port. That's very good. The other significant piece is that on the maximum side, typically they were only taking about 40 minutes to get through the port. So when you start to have a reduced time to get through the port and consistency, now you get to the point that you can start consistently planning and successfully getting 2 and 3 and sometimes as many as 4 round trips a day, which has a phenomenal impact on profitability. And of course, it opens up the opportunity for greater security and greater investment, if you will. We also, through this project, have a direct interface to the ACE manifest system. So again, every shipment carries with it the ACE manifest ID. So whenever there is any kind of an anomaly, we're able to push that directly to CBP, and it's already recognized as part of their system. Okay? I'll try to go through some of this a little quicker. One of the critical aspects of all of this now is we have to be able to measure the return on investment. We have to be able to measure the benefits, quantify the tangible benefits for participating. We created a unique geospatial platform, a GIS, with various symbols and so forth. So as the truck passes through the port, we know how much time is spent waiting in line. We know how much time is spent going through secondary inspection, whether it's TxDOT or FMCSA, Aduana, and so forth. In fact, in this particular one, if you see the note on the left-hand side, it says the wait line delay before the U.S. CBP primary inspection lanes was about 45 minutes. CBP reports their wait time, but they can only report what they see. So through the data that we collect, we're able to measure that, in fact, the wait line was backed up all the way into the Aduana space, if you will. So again, it's valid information that allows us to quantify the time going through the ports. We're able to then dissect that, break it out so that we can know how much time is spent, again, in the wait lines and so forth. We can also do that on an hourly basis. So if we see that the wait lines for Aduana are too long, perhaps time getting through the ports, or perhaps we're seeing a higher level of inspection rates than normal. These are things that we can provide information to the company, and we can provide that information to CBP and other authorities as well to try to resolve that on a real-time basis. And one thing we do also is we document the inspection rates. You'll see here that the Department of Public Safety and the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, they typically handle between 2% and 5% secondary inspection rates. And of course, we're able to determine the inspection rates and times by the bridges as well. This particular set of data becomes critical for the companies as they see before and after inspection rates. They can then quantify what those benefits are. Okay? One other major aspect is we measure the delays going through the ports. Again, once companies end up experiencing a 2 or 3 hour delay getting to the report or through the port, the cost to that company can be anywhere from $1,000 to $25,000 to, in essence, expedite the shipment beyond that. So again, one of the things that comes out of this is a secure shipment, in essence, minimizes and virtually eliminates delays being able to get through the ports as well. Okay. The last thing I'll point here is the data that we do collect going through the port allows us to quantify the number of trucks that are waiting in line, the number of trucks that are able to move through the various lines going through the ports. Typically, there's an assumption that Customs and Border Protection is the head of the line, and as a result of the long lines that we see for wait lines, are typically blamed specifically on Customs and Border Protection. And in fact, as we've collected this data, you can see the photos that are obtained from the webcams that were generated by the project showing the wait lines in Juarez. And in essence, what we're finding is that the long wait lines that we're seeing right now in Juarez are due primarily to the private inspections that are taking place on those trucks waiting to get into the port. And so the number of trucks per minute that are being processed in that area is about 30, whereas the CBP fast lane is handling close to 120 to 130 trucks per minute. So again, the data that we've been able to collect allows us to clearly understand where the problems are, in fact, where the opportunities are to improve crossing times. In essence, the project has given us the foundation for establishing a model port. There are no other cities, there are no other ports that have the kind of data and information that we have. And we can continue to use this to optimize shipment security. I guess the last couple of things there is it says we want to maximize the participation in trusted trade by providing that tangible return on investment and providing CBP with the tactical intelligence that they need to, shall we say, complete their mandate, which is protecting our borders from terrorism. Okay? This slide here just simply shows a blow up of the wait line or the actual travel through the port. In the upper right-hand corner, you see the Adana queue, Adana wait time. There's a time associated with getting through Adana. The red wedge that you see there is a secondary inspection wait time associated with Adana. If you go through an Adana secondary inspection, you're going to be there for a minimum of 90 minutes, sometimes as much as 2.5 hours. Then you have the CBP wait time, or the fast lanes, CBP secondary inspection. Then you can see the Federal Motor Carrier and DPS are very small wedges, so they're very insignificant from the standpoint of the actual overall improvements to the crossing times. But the areas where we have some tremendous opportunity is promoting trusted trade to eliminate some of those, as well as ensuring that there is a direct access to the ports and eliminate the wait lines if at all possible. There's basically a conclusion here. As we are able to work with trade to improve and verify security, and trade is willing to provide that information to CBP, CBP is now free to provide the critical benefits and maximize the benefits for that trusted trade participation. What happens is, as we provide that data, those tangible benefits are translated into dollar savings. And those dollar savings then are translated back into increased security. And so you continue to follow this sustainable development. So the trade, efficiency going through the port, and the security of those security of those shipments continues to raise until you've optimized, in essence, both the port and the security of your cross-border shipments. And the Secure Border Trade Project, in essence, provides the foundation and the opportunity to be able to do that. I will mention that the CBI funds have 5 different categories that are eligible for project types of improvements. The Secure Border Trade Project actually met 4 of those 5. The only 5th item that's in there actually is construction projects. But we were able to improve the infrastructure. Obviously, there were significant improvements in operations. We actually worked with Customs and Border Protection and made changes in their policies. So if a company is willing to self-report an event before it gets to the port, then CBP will protect that company and protect that CTPAT status. This was critical for the carriers, because the carriers, if they lose their CTPAT status, they're out of business. I mean, it's just that quick. So we were able to facilitate actual changes at the national level of policies, if you will. So again, this was very, very significant. One thing I will mention is that the Federal Highway Administration was extremely active in this particular project. As we had weekly meetings, monthly meetings, we had reports and so forth. The Federal Highway Administration was very active in understanding and following this project. They recognize the significance of this approach as, in essence, a solution to the problems that CBP and the CTPAT program face. As a result of that, and I can't verify it, but I know that the next round of coordinated border infrastructure funds that came to El Paso was $43 million. That's a big chunk of change of additional funds, and I believe that that was typically related to the progress that El Paso has made, not just from the Secure Border Trade Project, but it's due to, I think, the tremendous progress that El Paso has made in addressing and improving both the security and efficiencies of the ports. We did have a visit by the Department of Homeland Security, Science and Technology. The actual Director of Cargo Security from Washington, D.C. came and visited us. We had a number of other folks spent 6 hours with us. We've now been able to enter into a very formal R&D project, if you will, with Homeland Security. And of course, now we're essentially wrapping this up. What you can see here is that we now track over 6,000 trucks that pass throughout North America. And you can see that we have very detailed crossing times at most of the major ports now, certainly starting from Santa Teresa all the way to Brownsville. And as you look at each one of those, you can start to see where we need to focus in order to improve the crossing times at each of those other ports. The El Paso area, the major issue is wait times outside of Aduana, but when you get to Laredo and you get to Brownsville, it's the CBP wait times that need to be focused on in order to bring those crossing times down. So with that, I just want to conclude that this was an extremely successful project, and I'm going to say that it was an extremely important project as it established an unprecedented foundation for El Paso and things that we can use to move forward to, in essence, solve the problems that we have at the border. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Blanco?
Thank you, Bob. The $2 million from the Emerging Technology Fund, was that the only state contribution?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
The Project 21 was funded through the city. There was a $200,000 that was contribution from the city to assist in supporting the Project 21 initiative, which was an ongoing portion of it. The Frontera 21 lanes was a completely private effort with donated money, donated time, and so forth to be able to design, actually construct, and put that solution in place. Dr. Salvador Gonzalez here from the EPMPO actually assisted in doing some of the design and legwork on that up front as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And with that?
Mr. Chairman, may I just make a comment about something?
No, sir.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, I just want to thank the Texas members, and maybe some of the New Mexico members did too, but 17 days ago, Proposition 7 became a reality.
Yeah, good job. Great job, sir.
Our executive director, Mr. Medina, is serving on one of the working groups that we have got put together. I called a meeting of the select committee the Monday following the election. We may not meet before the end of the year, but we will be meeting very aggressively starting the first of the year. So the checks are in the mail.
Thank you. And with that, congratulations on all your hard work. And I know Chairman Pickett, you did a great job and traveled across the state, so thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I do want to say that the numbers were approximately 80% voted for it, so I want to know which 20% of the members here did not vote for Prop 7.
Well, based on that, it's 2 out of 10, and we're not going to tell you which 2 out of 10.
Thank you, Mayor.
We've, anyway, congratulations, great job. Before, and I have no reports, as we send out a letter on a monthly basis, and hope everyone's been getting your letter. And before we do adjourn, we've had a request by Mr. Rooney to come up that, since I skipped him originally, now he's ready for me. Mr. Rooney?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Mike Rooney, sorry I didn't speak up during agenda item number 3. It's the ethics policy, and this is one of the more detailed ethics policies I've seen of any of the local governmental entities. One thing I've noticed when I go through all of them is there doesn't seem to be anything that covers misstatements of fact. When I attend governmental meetings, I have every expectation that what governmental officials are saying is factual. If information given out is later found to be wrong, it seems incumbent upon officials to correct that information. Over the years that I've come to these meetings, it seems like the sharpest and most pointed questions and discussions have to do with information that's given out or people understanding what is correct. So I'd ask you to consider how to do it. It's not easy. If you go up to Wikipedia and look at misinformation, there's a whole list of items. So it has to be factual. The most extreme local example that I could give where information was given out and found to be wrong is the Children's Hospital. Representative Pickett, I noticed in the past on some of the TxDOT, it hasn't been that way for quite a while, but some of the most pointed questions that you would ask of TxDOT had to do with, is the information factual? One of the things given out in the past was a number of years ago when the state was pushing for local governments areas to take mobility funds, you had to have tolls. And our portion of the toll, if we participated in the project, was $82 million, was a carrot. The project that we submitted was the Northeast Parkway. Over time, TxDOT officials said, because we participated in that program, our portion had grown to about $132 million. When I sent in a Texas Open Records request to the MPO, no place could that money be found. And then Representative Pickett, since I was keeping him posted on what was going on, he said, Mr. Rooney, in the long run, out of about $2.3 billion, El Paso has done good. So it's something, it's not worth pursuing apparently, as you negotiate and trade funds and stuff. But just consider whether we should have something put in. But this was an extremely detailed ethics policy, one of the more detailed. I don't think any other governmental entity comes close to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rainey, for your time. And with that, we go to the next meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Wait, we still have to do the next meeting. Are we having I know you talked about you didn't have enough for the December meeting, or you're still
Right, so
recommending that or not?
So at this point in time, we do have the project status reports that we're working on that we will certainly have a TPAC and present to them for recommendation to the policy board. I think that's the only item that we have per se, and so nonetheless, the importance of the readiness report is to give a demonstration to this body of where the projects are at. And certainly that information would be available to the policy board through email. So at this point, I don't think that it's fully necessary to have a meeting.
It's not even an action item.
It's not an action item, so
The recommendation.
is there a recommendation to have the next meeting January 22nd?
Is it 22nd? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir? Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to have the next meeting January 22nd. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Mr. Chairman, just for informational purposes, will we be coming in a little bit early? Are you initiating the training again, starting in
That's correct,
January?
starting January.
Right.
So the regular meeting will begin at 9, and board members, though, will be asked to be here at what time in January?
8:30.
Okay, so just so again, we announce it early, so even though we're not meeting now till January, board members would be here by 8:30 for our training, and then the regular meeting starts at 9 a.m.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now take your motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
Mayor, before we
Oh,
adjourn,
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Costa, before we adjourn?
I was asked by TxDOT, I'm sorry, thank you. I was asked by TxDOT yesterday to remind everyone that I-10 will be closed Sunday morning, so to stay home.
And they also gave you Bob Felix's phone number.
It will close at 3 a.m. for establishing traffic control. Work will be from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m., reopening at 5 p.m. If you're on the west side, just travel normally, try to avoid Mesa, approach Mesa near your destination. If you're going east to west, try to use Trans Mountain if possible.
Great, thank you.
Phone number is 915-309-0482.